What up, bros?
What up, bruh?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World,
What is Bruh Meets World?
your Boy Meets World fan cast. This is episode 25. I'm Siege,
And I'm TC.
and we have a guest this episode.
Yes, we have our very first guest. And I'm so excited that we finally were able to figure this out.
Hey guys, it's Kristine, old high school friend of CJ and TC. Happy to be here.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope I can shed some insight onto something. I don't know what, but we'll find out.
Yeah, this is our friend Kristine. We've known her for a very long time, and we are really happy that she's our first guest.
I'm happy to be here, guys. I'm excited.
Yay.
Yeah, and me and CJ were saying how much we've been wanting to have a female perspective brought to the show, and I can't think of a better episode than this one to get some real insights.
Let me tell you, I am thrilled that you guys chose this episode because this is one that sticks out in my memory, probably one of the most of all the episodes.
Which is interesting, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. That's great to hear. But so Kristine, why don't you give us your history with Boy Meets World?
I grew up watching Boy Meets World at home. It was that, nighttime sitcom growing up with my family. It was my introduction to American culture and what I should expect from school and friends and my social life. And much like you, CJ, Mr. Turner was my sexual awakening as a child.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, he wasn't my sexual awakening as a child, but it was more like now that I'm older, I just realized that I definitely missed out a little bit.
Taking some fresh eyes at some old dick in a new way. I see you.
Absolutely terrible. But also, all right, and then Kristine, how was high school for you?
I really enjoyed high school. I was lucky enough to have a lot of friends. I feel like it was as good as it was gonna be. I didn't really,
That's the best response I've ever heard towards high school. It's as good as it was gonna be.
Right? What can you expect from high school, right? You're a little awkward. You come into yourself, and then you get older and you realize that self's not anybody yet.
Exactly. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So, are you guys ready to get into this?
Let's deep dive, bruh.
Let's go. I'm ready.
All right. So, tell me about it. This is season 2, episode 2, Pairing Off. We open up with Corey and Sean looking on as a teenage couple makes out in the hallway. It seems as if all of their peers are pairing off. While Sean's hair is shown to have a strong influence on the girls at their school, Corey, in his lack of movable hair, struggles to keep up. Sean suggests that Corey pair off with the new girl, which Corey rebuffs for someone he feels a little bit more convenient and approachable, his friend Topanga. But Topanga says that she values their friendship and uses her magical hair to gain the attention of a different male classmate. Meanwhile, Eric and his new friend Rebecca arrive to the Matthews house to study. Once left alone, Rebecca asks to see the other rooms in the house, leading the two upstairs. Corey eventually walks in on Eric and Rebecca making out in his parents' room, and he later uses this information to blackmail Eric into telling him how to get girls. The next day, Corey uses Eric's advice to seem interested to secure a date with the same new girl Sean suggested earlier in the episode. That evening, Amy and Alan discover an earring in their bed, which Amy correctly assumes belongs to the teenage girl Eric brought home the day before. The parents walk into the room and confront Eric about his actions with Rebecca, only to have Corey come in and inform them that he witnessed the event and used Eric's advice to get a date. When Corey admits that he didn't even know the name of his potential date, the family has a discussion on the proper way to treat women. The next day, when the new girl arrives for their date, Corey cancels it, admitting that he tried to force a connection and instead offers to get to know the new girl, whose name is Wendy. So, first thoughts.
So many thoughts, so many feelings.
So this is a really different episode, but of course, since TC and I always talk, we want to give the floor to Kristine. Tell us more.
Oh man, this episode brought up a lot of those awkward feelings that I had in middle school and what I thought like romance was gonna be like as a teenager, and I'm realizing now where all of those tropes came from, and they're impossible. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I was certainly not dating casually my first day of high school.
No, not at all. Who was?
I mean, apparently, you know what? I'm not gonna lie. Kristine has the flowy hair, but TC, you and I don't have the Sean hair. So, like,
No, and can I just tell you that I strongly related to Corey, and I made a note about how I wanted Sean's quote unquote good hair,
dude,
which you know about.
the very first note that I have, and I don't know if you noticed, but in my summary of this episode, I mentioned hair several times because the hair in this episode is such a strong point for my
and I related
childhood.
to his struggles so much, not being able to move your hair.
Yeah, it was very, very traumatizing for me. And as Kristine said, it really did kind of shape my expectations, which, yeah.
For better or worse, I think.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. So, in the roll call, we do get some new characters in this episode. We get the new girl, who we eventually, at the end of the episode, find out is named Wendy, and we get a new substitute teacher named Miss.Kelly.
Wendy, I recognized as being the mean girl from the movie Casper with Christina Ricci.
I
don't know if you remember.
She did look familiar.
Yes. That's where she's from. And I'm sure she's done other things. I'm sure she's a great actress, but that's all I know of her from.
She was sort of like the epitome of a beautiful girl.
Yeah.
In the 90s, right?
Yeah, just blonde, blue eyes, pale as if the sun had never gazed upon her.
You know, it's funny that you guys mention good hair because I even felt like to some extent that I wasn't that girl. I wasn't what everyone looked for the high school bombshell.
Yeah, I mean, the word bombshell immediately makes me think of blonde.
Right.
Well, you've been blonde before.
Well, you know, with the help of bleach.
Sure.
Yeah, when you're willing to strip away everything that God gave you, it's amazing what, you can conform to.
Thousands of years of evolution have nothing on 40 volume and a scoop of bleach.
Preach. Preach.
And self-perception and confidence and honesty.
Exactly. Yeah, no. The hair thing was just something I really, really gravitated towards because I think we've talked about this before in the podcast, but like identity and the three of us are each minorities who went to a predominantly white schooling system, predominantly white area in general. And that really influenced kind of like, as you were saying earlier, self-confidence and self-perception. And one of my earliest memories as a kid was like, I never wanted to quote unquote be white, but I did want the hair. Like I wanted that Jonathan Taylor Thomas hair.
Well, I learned from the lead singer of Immature, Marquise Houston, that you did not need to be white to have that hair. I knew this because I grew out my hair with the hopes of straightening it out so that I could look like the lead singer of this group. I don't know if you guys remember, he played Roger on Sister Sister. He had beautiful flowing hair. I don't know how it happened.
Do you think
I tried it and I burnt my scalp once and then I never attempted this again.
Did you not learn anything from the second episode of Boy Meets World? No, it was like the fourth episode of Boy Meets World.
Corey, the alternative friends? No,
exactly.
I mean this was I wanted it so badly because again on this show, the people who are perceived to be more attractive are the people with the straight hair.
Yeah.
The people who are perceived to be less attractive is Corey with his curly hair.
Yeah. And by the way, what are we setting up there?
That a little bit.
What do you guys have to say about that?
Oh God, too much.
That's what this is for. We're supposed to hit on these points. So yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that the episode does a really good job of talking about just how clueless you are when you're trying to fit in and how you sort of grasp onto things that you see your friends doing that are working for them and you see it, turning out positively and you want those positive experiences too, but how do you do the hair flip when your hair is curly, you know?
It's a very strong, like, Corey immediately turns to Sean and is just kind of like, all right, well, how do you do that? And then there's a big deal about how Sean has a 30-foot radius, right? It's just like
that I thought was fucking hilarious. That this kid literally is in Corey Matthews' driveway, flips his hair, and there's a girl, Sean, is that you?
Yeah, it's really funny. Again, same thing with Topanga. Topanga's just like, she just is not even faced that direction. She just kind of flips her hair and she's talking to Corey, and then all of a sudden, this dude out of nowhere is just like, "Oh my God, Topanga!" And it does, and then we get that whole scene right before Topanga shows up of Corey doing the best he can to like just kind of imitate it.
Can I ask you guys a question before we get too far ahead? When did you guys feel like, oh, everyone is coupling up, I need to catch up?
I think it was 5th grade for me.
Really?
Yeah. I had a little group of friends. Maybe it speaks a bit to the elementary school that I went to. But I had a group of friends, and, you know, they paired up, and it was just holding hands during movie time kind of dating.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? Like, you picked
heavy
a boy.
Stuff.
Heavy stuff. And then I think it was 8th grade when I realized people were having their first kiss. And, like, I had not yet kissed a boy, let alone, like, held hands with a boy, except, like, as a flower girl in a wedding.
What about you, Siege? Where did this land for you?
When I think back on these things, it's very confusing time for me because I think I measured things differently. There was so much of, like, me internally dealing with, like, sexuality that I don't really think I noticed that people were like pairing off. I will say that like by 16, it was very clear that everyone had established dates. You know what I mean? Like they were dating, boyfriend, girlfriend, and all this other stuff. But earlier than that, I think I was just in my head more than anything else. You know, I also there's like a more darker history with me, but like there are like all these other things where it's like, yeah, kissing and all this other stuff. I had been doing that since I was like 7 years old. So I didn't really think, oh my God, all these other people are pairing off. I need to make sure I attach myself to someone.
Yeah, because I'm more on your boat where I didn't feel like people were like coupling off and like dating like that until like 15, 16.
Yeah.
And that's when like people were actually going out on dates more than anything else.
Correct.
But before that, like there were crushes, but nothing really more than just like that feeling of wanting to be with someone, not actually like, oh, so yeah, I'll pick you up and we'll go out and like what? Like that seems like that's what I'm saying. They seem crazy young for this. This is 7th grade for them, and this just seemed way too young for them to be like, yeah, people are making out in the hallways, they're hooking up left and right. They're together one day, breaking up the next day. Like, that seems a little bit mature for that age group, at least to me.
But you know what? Honestly, I think it's a very important thing to remember that at this point in time, we've already established that the boys are in 7th grade. However, the school goes all the way up to 12th grade. So
which I
what
find
we're seeing
here crazy problematic.
Yeah. What we're seeing here is this older, the 16, 17-year-olds who are pairing off, and the kids are in school and they're imitating that behavior. Because you're right, when I think about to like 7th grade, I just thought about it. We were doing group dates, not really, which weren't really group dates, you know, but it's like you would get like a group of people to go out to the movies.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone was doing, and you wouldn't be in part of that group. But like, and people would like talk and hang out a little one-on-one within that outing, but you weren't asking one person one-on-one to go out.
Well, I mean, this is a prime example, I think, of television setting some really interesting expectations to kids.
Yeah.
About what high school is.
And I also think what romance is.
Totally.
Well, yeah. Well, we're going to get into that a little bit later, but I like the way that they handle the expectation of boys in this episode. They don't do it as quickly as I think is needed, but there is this whole expectation of Corey that he's owed a girl. Like that very early on, Corey's like, where does mine come from? You know, where do I find out the girl assigned to me? That's what he says. And I was like, whoa, assigned to you? What is this?
It's a really funny part because he's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go after Topanga. And Topanga's like,
Corey, when guys and girls go out, first they fall passionately in love. Then after a week they hate each other. So for one great passionate week, we lose a friendship that could last a lifetime. I mean, if you are. Corey, don't worry. I'm sure there's someone out there for you. Give me a name!
Again,
he just wants somebody because everyone else has somebody. He doesn't actually want a girlfriend. He just wants a person so he doesn't feel left out.
Which is important, especially this is one of those things where this is very relevant because of the fact that incel culture. Do you guys know what incel culture is?
School me, Siege.
All right. Incel culture is involuntarily celibate individuals. So they call themselves incels, and their whole thing is that they are angry. They are majority white men who are angry that girls aren't pairing off with them, that girls aren't sleeping with them, that girls won't go out with them.
When you say involuntarily celibate, you just mean virgin, right? Like, why are we trying to? They just haven't gotten laid yet. Like,
well, so here's the thing. Part of the reason I feel that they are involuntarily celibate is because they do things like name themselves involuntarily celibate and then complain about the fact that women aren't giving them this service that they think that they're owed. And like, yeah, we used to just call that virgin, but it's 2018. We rebrand everything.
Wow, that is ridiculous. I'm sorry. I do not mean to offend any involuntarily celibate listeners. However,
no, so I want to make it very clear. The reason why incels are important to bring up is because incels are different from what the nation would classify as virgins, because virgins kind of, as you said, they see it as I haven't had sex yet. There's like an age appropriate time. It's still a cultural problem, but a person who considers themselves a virgin doesn't have the anger that incels do. And with incels, a lot of the local, I'm going to call them terrorist attack, white domestic terrorism, has been from these incels. And it comes from this culture of expecting something. Yeah, expecting women to give them something. They are owed a woman. They are assigned. They are angry that no one has assigned them their woman yet.
It's a really aggressive, way to think about relationships, that you're owed someone to dedicate time to you, to be physically romantic with you, and completely disregards what a girl would want or what the person of interest would want.
Who even cares? This show is their name doesn't matter. How they feel doesn't actually matter. Just make them think you're interested, because it doesn't like, it's just getting someone to say yes is the goal, not an actual relationship.
And it's the idea that women are something to be wanted, that we don't have our own wants, that we don't need advice to find a guy because we could look in someone's direction and someone's willing to fuck us.
To quote Princess Jasmine, I am not a prize to be won.
And yet that dynamic is just, it's in every bit of pop culture.
Yeah,
no,
totally.
that's why I said I really like when we get into this. I like that later on we address this, and they have, first of all, they have Amy be the voice of reason, which I think is really important. But I like the fact that we do bring this up, because right now the picture that we're painting with Corey and in this hallway is the fact that even if you take, like, when he approaches Topanga, he goes to Topanga and he's like, honey, can I call you honey? And she says no. And he's like, anyway.
Welcome to my life. Welcome to every interaction I've had with a man.
That makes
what
me
I
so
thought
sad.
was a really interesting takeaway from that too is that after Topanga kind of blows him off, he says to Sean, like, for the record, I broke up with her. And Sean's like, that's how I saw it. And I was like, wow, this is such like a true statement of how men handle rejection from women. It's just to be like, oh yeah, no, I blew her off. She's crazy. She's all these things. It's just a micro version of that, a high school version of it.
So I feel bad because I did mark that down as like a funny bit to me because I was just like, that's definitely a friend who's like, that's how I saw it. But at the exact same time, you bring up a very good point that no, it does just kind of perpetrate this culture of men sticking together against the women. It's like her story doesn't matter because we're going to agree that you turned her down. Even though she's living her life and like doesn't even care about them too.
Which I like. Again, this is another example of how Boy Meets World isn't rushing this relationship that everyone wants to happen. They could have easily made Corey and Topanga become a thing right off the bat season 2, but they're holding off on it, and I like that so much more.
Yeah, well, I like that. And then also, I like that Topanga's response is, look, we have a friendship. And she says, we have a friendship, and I don't want 1 week of passion to just throw that all away. And Corey's response is, I'm game. It's like, again, it's just this childish, immature way of looking at, honestly, his relationship with Topanga, which shows, there's that whole thing that women mature more than men. But I think it's just that, no, women are taught the value of another person's friendship, whereas at this point in time, boys are just rewarded with women, apparently.
It definitely set up this dynamic for me where guys were the aggressors. Let them come to you. Your sexuality is something to be won and not something to be overtly confident about or to hit on guys because they'll come to you. And then, of course, none of them ever came to me because I was a unibrow and an overbite. But... But it is, I think that that's just something I'm now learning as a 30-year-old woman to be confident and that we girls have wants too, and we're sexual creatures, and we can be just as aggressive as men, but maybe we just have more respect.
Well, the just as aggressive as men thing will be approached later on in the season, but that's framed as is psycho girlfriend. And I think that that's something that culture kind of doubles down on as well. It's like if a guy is aggressive and assertive with a relationship, well, especially if he's a good guy, then you're supposed to be rooting for him. But if it's a girl who's just can't get enough of a male, then she's a stalker, and it's kind of crazy.
Stage 5 clinger.
Very good. Yeah. All right. So how about, speaking of all of this, in the next scene when we go to health class, which, by the way,
I have lots of thoughts about this.
In health class, we get a substitute teacher named Miss.Kelly. And with Miss.Kelly, we get some nice back and forth. But
we get a nice view of the back of her ass is what we get. And all the kids get that view. They're staring hard at it. Sean gets hard and legit tries to hook up with this teacher saying, I'm a 24-year-old cop.
Yeah, so first of all, I did think the 21 Jump Street thing was Sean thinking very quick on his feet. I mean, it's stupid, but it's hilarious. But I also liked it because it kind of echoes what Kristine was saying, which is that there's this older woman who just knows how to handle this kid. It's just she doesn't engage. He is definitely pursuing her hard, and very rightly so, because she's a teacher, and I think that this is the only right response. She knows how to put him in his place, and then just kind of give him the attention that he needs as a student, but ignore everything else.
It was also just wildly inappropriate. And you just think about when you're that age and you have a cute teacher, you're like, I'm gonna flirt, it's harmless. And now I think about it, I'm like, that probably made them feel so uncomfortable, and you're thinking about losing their jobs and just being perceived in the wrong way, and it's played so lightly in that scene.
Well, my biggest complaint with this scene is that the sub comes in and she's like, okay, guys, we're going to be talking about human reproduction. Why is a substitute teacher being entrusted to teach this topic that is so important for kids to get right? You know what I mean? This is just a great example of how public education did not prepare us at all for any kind of real life sexual situations. They just kind of taught us the basic minimum facts so they can say they did it, but still leave so much vague and unanswered.
That's what I was going to say. My answer to that is they don't mind if a substitute teacher teaches it because they don't expect they don't expect it to be a well-prepared, thought-out lesson that really dives into the questions you may have. And, it's one of those things that this is probably the only time those kids got that lesson and everything else just moved on, because that's how we treat sexual education in this country, and especially in the 90s, and it's really sad. I remind you guys that, I don't know about everyone, but I was part of Respect in middle school.
Fun.
And for those of you who don't know, Respect was this whole kind of it was the sexual version of Dare, where it's like you said you vowed you would stay a virgin until, I don't know, probably you said till marriage or not. I don't know. It was very Christian based. And
so your biblical marriage is what you're trying to say.
Can I give you an example of something they did in Respect? What they would do is, a woman, I remember seeing this. A girl had this cup that she was drinking from, and then a guy came up and spit in her cup because...
Ooh, I like when guys do that.
Because they had intercourse and their fluids had swapped. But then another girl came and spat in the same cup, and then all these people came because when you hook up with one person, you hook up with every person they've been with. And then they were like, now imagine having to drink that spit-filled cup. Whoa, is that what you're comparing sex to? What the hell? Who is the sex-filled cup in this situation?
I think we just call that polyamory.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just the basic human relationship. I don't understand what you're expecting.
Well, not only that, there is this whole thing about the guilt of being with more than one person, or the guilt of having more than one relationship in general.
Well, no, towards women, yes. Towards men, it's celebrated.
Well, I mean, for the Respect program, one thing I do remember is it was kind of gender neutral. They weren't this
no
girl
one
is
should have
bad.
Sex.
Yeah, exactly. That's where they were. Their whole thing was that both sexes, both genders should wait. The way that they did it for me, which I remember because it's really, really cheesy, is that they gave someone a paper heart or whatever, and then every time he went on a date or was with someone, he would give a piece of that paper heart. But when he found his wife, he didn't have anything but this small shredded thing to give her. And they were like, do you want to give that, or do you want to give your whole heart? And
God, I remember this. You're triggering very unpleasant memories for me,
CJ. And for the record, I feel like the opposite. It's hey, I have this cool tool belt to bring into this relationship.
Or I have so much experience.
Yeah.
You're an idiot.
Yeah, I think I know where the clitoris is, so I can bring that to this.
Which, by the way, I really think it's sad that we must know that's actually probably advanced knowledge right now. It's oh, this guy knows where the clitoris is? Oh, what do we think about the whole the boys' understanding of the reproductive system and the Philippine tubes?
Well, being a product of Philippine tubes, I appreciated the shout out in the show. But I think this touches on something else, is that for girls, all we learn about is that your vagina is going to bleed for the rest of your life. And here's how to handle that emotional and physical trauma. And I feel like boys were just don't put it in the V without a sleeve, or you're going to have a baby and you don't want to have a baby.
That's accurate. That's exactly what I learned from school about sex.
I was meant to be used as a vessel to...
Oh, God. That's a good way of saying it. I never noticed that. You're right.
Yeah, I am a vessel of all the men's dreams.
Wow.
And nightmares. So.
Wow. We are really tearing apart. And no, I love it. I think it's fantastic. Because this is exactly kind of the problem. I believe they do things differently now. Well, depending on where you live in America, they do things differently now. But yeah, a very big part of health education was that whole thing that women, your body's about to go through all of these changes, and you're just going to be a target for sperm for the next couple of years. And then for the boys, the only reaction to that is, hey, watch where you place that sperm.
Which even that we can't get right most of the time. I misplaced more sperm. I don't even know what to. I couldn't find it if I wanted to. They're like immigrant children. I can't find them, guys. They're lost.
It's the genocide we're not talking about.
Absolutely terrible, but hilarious. I love it so much.
One thing I do want to say is that while there's all this discussion about sex, like Corey pulls the substitute aside, and all he wants to know is like, how do I get a girl to say hi? Like he is so like worried about like the basics that he doesn't care about ovaries, he doesn't care about sperm. Like none of that is like an actual reality to him yet, because he can't even get a girl to say hello to him.
That is a positive about Corey specifically. Unlike Sean, where Sean's just like, oh, I grew out my hair one day and people started approaching me, and that gives me the confidence to approach this woman who is twice my age. Corey's like, he's humble. He does ask for help. And he goes to the first person he goes to after Sean gives him no advice is this older woman, and he does ask her a question, and we don't hear what she says, but I do like that he went to someone who he trusted and was like, hey, can I ask you a question? How do I get girls to speak to me?
Yeah, it was just a very basic, like, oh, this is what a kid this age should want to know, more than the other stuff.
Exactly. Speaking of older kids, let's talk about Eric and Rebecca.
That chick was thirsty.
Oh man, I don't know if I was supposed to be that way at 17, but I definitely wasn't. And watching the episode, I think younger, I was really naive to what that meant to go up to a bedroom and like just see the bedroom. I'm like, what could they possibly be doing? And I, again, was just blown away with how advanced Corey and his brother Eric.
The moment Amy leaves with Morgan, this chick is like, I need a tour of your place. I need to go to your parents' bed. And you need to throw me on here and penetrate me. And the moment Amy left.
I will not let you paint Rebecca that way, because Rebecca does not say those things directly. What Rebecca says is,
I'm paraphrasing.
Are you going to show me the rest of the house? Eric chose the location. I think that it was clear that Rebecca was willing to go anywhere to make out with Eric, but she did not specifically say, take me to your parents' room. That was where Eric chose to stop the tour. And I am not a tour guide. I can't dictate where the tour ends.
Yeah, I guess my thing is not that she is commanding her own sexuality. I have nothing against that. My thing is that Amy just left. If your parents leave, like, you have to have a time buffer of like, hey, she may have forgot something. She might be on her way back. If she had forgot Morgan's sneakers, she would have walked in on Eric, just the tipping into Rebecca.
The boldness.
It's the boldness of it all.
But also, I just remember what it's like to be young and horny. I mean, I'm still considered myself young and horny, and there have been plenty of times where it's like, oh yeah, maybe I should have waited a little bit longer. Maybe, the windows should be all the way rolled up. I'm not talking about my weekend. I'm just
Never.
saying.
Don't ever roll up your windows.
Nope. Let the funk out.
Terrible. Really brings out the worst in you, TC.
But one thing about Eric and Rebecca is that Corey walks in, finds them. Rebecca bolts so quickly. Like, Eric's like, hey, like, do you want to keep studying? Do you want to whatever? And she's like, no, I need to go. I don't think we should hang out again. I don't think that Corey was the reason that Rebecca left. I think that Eric wasn't very good, and she was looking for a reason to leave midway through it and used Corey as the excuse.
Okay, so I want to pause right there because I want to hear Kristine's interpretation of that scene, because I wanted to think of what people thought about her reasoning, because I had my own idea about why she left, and you're right, she was very persistent. But I want to hear what Kristine, what did you think?
Well, while we are talking about how aggressive the boys are and they're sort of the go-getters of romance, I do feel like the girls in this episode are pretty confident. Like, in the beginning, Topanga doesn't want to have a boyfriend in Corey and isn't apologetic about saying so, and even Rebecca with Eric isn't apologetic about her just wanting to go home. She's just over it. And so I think they come off pretty confident, and I think they're handled well and not, looked at as these damsels in distress that need a boyfriend or are desperate for romance.
Woohoo! What did you think about her? So what you're saying is that the fact that she wanted to leave is just the fact that she wanted to leave. There's no questioning it.
You don't owe an explanation to him. You're not in a relationship.
Yeah, and honestly, I think, first of all, that was one of the biggest lessons I learned while, I guess, sexually maturing, or however you want to put it, was that I had a guy I was interested in who I was like, hey, do you want to make out? We were at this party or whatever. Like, do you want to make out or do you want to do anything? And he was like, no, I'm good. And I personally was so offended. And I was like, well, why not? And his response was, what other explanation would be better than no? And that moment on, I was like, that's a very good response to that. And I was like, what more could you say other than no that would convince me? No was enough. And I think
I'm just over it. I just don't want to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a very good point. We don't need to. I know TC's dying to explore.
No, I'm loving the dialogue.
But it's we don't necessarily need to discuss her motivations, because the point is she didn't want to anymore.
And a part of what I got from her too is that perhaps she was very confident about what she wanted until she got it, and maybe she stopped feeling as confident. Is that a possibility?
I took it as she just wanted to make out. And now that the buzz was over,
the romance had died. Yeah.
Yeah, the moment
little brothers do dry you up pretty quick.
I'm going to put you in a corner somewhere. You're
Sorry, one other joke I just want to mention that was sprinkled throughout the episode is every scene opened, Corey and Sean are like, oh, did you hear about Jesse and Kate, or did you hear about so and so and so and so? And it's really funny because at one point they're like, oh, did you hear about Michael and Lisa Marie? Which I just thought was a really topical thing at the time, because Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie had just gotten married, and so that was a really funny thing that was current at the moment. That is,
I did not even make that comparison, and I hate that you did, but it makes sense.
Oh, well, of course I did. But I just thought that was really funny.
Okay, so what do we think about
Jonathan fucking this up?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say there's this whole point during the school that we kind of glossed over, where the boys, when Corey's like, I'm sure this whole pairing off thing won't last, and then we see Mr. Jonathan with Miss.Kelly, which, by the way, I would totally watch that sex tape.
Oh, I agreed.
Me three.
Yeah. And then
there's something for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm in it for the curls. There's a lot of curls going on.
You're right. That is there would be scenes that are just hairballs, but again, I'm here for it.
Guys, hair porn is my favorite category on Pornhub. It's highlighted for me.
I mean, I'll have to check it out.
Guys, don't knock it till you try it.
Then we see, which, by the way, this kind of almost knocked me off my seat. We see Mr. Feeney come, and he's talking to an older female administrator, and his statement is, I have the virility of a man half my age. And I was like, that is a joke that you're just supposed to get, that if you're watching this as a young kid, you just say that, oh, Mr. Feeney is implying that he's younger, or that, but it's as an adult, you're like, Feeney is like, yo, I fucks.
he was dick slinging like a pro. The moment he came out, I was like, look at this brother, smooth talking to this woman we've never met before. I don't believe we've met before.
That's Feeney. Hit it and quit it.
Yeah, hit it and quit it, Feeney. Who knew?
So yeah, that was definitely a scene.
But that isn't, to your point, this is Corey. We're learning that this is going to be a lifetime struggle. Love is not something that's going to be a fad that's going to, blow over in a week. this is something that's always going to be an issue for him.
Well, not only that, I think it's also this entire episode brings up something that I think we don't talk about enough, which is the issue of boys comparing themselves to other boys. We've always kind of had this trope of girls being influenced by other girls in high school and things like that. But this episode really shows how Corey, this young, impressionable boy, is comparing himself to all the other boys around him. He's comparing himself to Sean. He's comparing himself to Eric. He's comparing himself to Mr. Feeney and Mr. Turner. And I just think that that's really important that we get this look.
Yeah, and I think even as a girl watching it, I could resonate with a lot of that awkwardness of not being the one that could flirt very easily or was confident or I was sort of awkward, and I can relate to that awkwardness that Corey has, even as a girl. And just the idea of looking at, even from a pop culture perspective, looking at his teachers and thinking like, oh, that's what someone experienced looks like. That's what someone experience would do. And that's who I have to become if I want to have a relationship.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Amy and Alan this episode. So as we kind of said, there's this whole scene. Well, first of all, a little thing. Amy like works at a gallery now, apparently. And
no, yes, that's the move. No, I took. That is not her job. Amy does not work at a gallery. We've established that she works part-time as a real estate agent. Now she's working at a gallery. I feel like they do this to TV moms in the 90s. Like, even like Aunt Viv, she changed jobs like 3 times. I'm certain of it. Like, I don't understand why this emphasis is so strong on the father's figure's job, but again, just so whatever when it comes to what the mom does.
That was my real issue with this, was the fact that like we've established that Amy was a real estate agent, and they give her this line of dialogue, and I was like, oh, she's going to be showing houses, or I expected them to like really go into she's tired, but explain it, like the job and career that we've established for her, and it's not that
there was no reason for them to make something new up. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So that was a thing that I knew you and I would want to point out. But at the exact same time, I want to discuss their dynamic and Alan's whole insecurity thing in this scene. Go ahead.
Well, before we get into that, we need to discuss the conversation Corey has with Eric about how to approach women.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so Corey catches Eric mid-pen with Rebecca in the bed, and he's like, bro, I have you. You need to give me advice on how to talk to women.
Okay, you got eyes?
Yeah.
Use them.
How?
Look at her. Look into her. Look through her. I mean, make her think she's the most exquisite thing your eyes have ever beheld.
Who her?
Who cares? Pick somebody.
Well, how do I pick?
You got eyes?
I thought we established that.
Make eye contact. Make her eyes believe that your eyes are interested in her.
So I have to be interested in her.
No, you're overachieving. You only have to make her think you are.
And getting their name isn't important. Just like horrible advice that Corey then uses to try to get a date with an actual girl.
And the worst part is it works.
100%.
Well, so what I think is important, and I think it's bad because the episode kind of shows that it works, but in reality, what worked was Corey just straight up asking her out. Now, yes, he was able to get her attention by staring her down, basically, and making her feel insecure, but it wasn't that she was like, it didn't have the same effect that Sean's hair flip did. You know what I mean? Where it's like these people are just drawn to him and like, oh, I'm at your will now. What happens is Corey actually musters up the confidence to ask her out, which was not what Eric told him to do. I think that distinction needs to be made, but it's not. And I just thought that what's really funny is what's successful for Corey is when he just straight up is direct and is like, hey, would you like to go out sometime? And it's not this weird, creepy thing, which, by the way, obsessing about her hair and all this other stuff, that really creeped me out. I was like, I would have slowly backed out of the room.
Yeah, I just thought all the advice Eric gave to Corey was awful advice. Was advice that Eric didn't even think himself. It was just something that maybe was told to him through some other guy that he had talked to. It just felt like real machismo 80s. it just seems very, very dated and
To be
archaic.
fair, they also call it out though. Again, like when we get to the parent scene, which I do think it's important to talk about this, but when we get to the parent scene, they paint Eric's information like by the end of the episode, Eric's not supposed to give any advice to anyone about anything. You know what I mean? And I think that that's important.
Well, he's proven that he can't be trusted a little bit. But no, okay, so Alan and Amy are now in bed, and they find this earring that Rebecca had left in the bed from when Eric was doing her. And Amy's like, oh, this earring. And Alan's like, I don't know where it came from. And Amy's like, I'm not accusing you of having an affair. And he gets really sensitive and weird about it. And he's like, whoa, 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 what are you talking about? Just today, some chick was throwing her tits in my face, asking me where, like, if the bread was fresh. Like, I can still get it. And Amy's like, I'm not saying that you can't. And he's like, well, you're hurting my feelings. And I'm like, what? Really?
I told you.
And what wife says, like, this is for sure you and I'm okay with it? She seems to, she's obviously very lighthearted about finding the earring.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think it's interesting because first of all, we know how I feel about Alan's insecurities. I think that Alan is like the most insecure one out of this whole family dynamic. And a lot of the show is Alan like whining or complaining, with Amy being the better, more understanding parent. I will say, Alan also looks better this season than he did. So I was like, oh, Alan.
He got a haircut. He looks great. He had a very Jonathan Turner type of mullet that they cleaned up in the back, and they're letting Jonathan take over the mullet reign.
Exactly. So this version of Alan definitely could get some. I'm sure there are plenty of girls in the grocery store who are just dying to get it on in the back room.
Did you find Alan to be dilfy?
Oh, very dilfy. Yes, chiseled features.
Yes.
Arms that look strong.
Sure.
So yeah, Alan, but I think the thing that makes Alan, or that upsets me about Alan, is this whole thing of being like, I could totally have an affair. What, you don't think I'm able of having an affair? And it's just like, dude, why are you making problems for yourself? Your wife loves you and trusts you, and why would you even? But like again,
silly plot device.
It's not even a silly plot device because it does echo Alan's previous behavior.
Yeah. I wasn't a fan of it. Wasn't a fan of any of it. But what I did find interesting was this whole, I'm going to go with you to talk to Eric because I know if you talk to him, you're just going to give him that wink, wink, ha-ha, don't have sex too early thing, which I thought is a very interesting thing to touch on. This whole culture that, like, the way men prepare their sons to date versus how they prepare their daughters to date.
Well, yeah,
and the different attitudes that come with that.
That was my next point. My next point was going to be, of course, I told you, I always love Amy, and I love that she was like, no, we're not going to do this whole thing where we kind of applaud Eric for getting a girl to go up to our room, but at the exact same time kind of paint it like we're angry. And I really love that they insisted that Amy join the conversation.
I just think that it's that belief that it's his son and this is what boys do. And of course he would go in and like give him a high five and a pep talk. And I do wonder like what that conversation would have been like if it was girl. Was it daughter?
Yeah, that's a very good point. If it was Rebecca.
Guys, we just need to accept that like pussy grabbing has been a part of our traditions for now going back decades, probably longer. So this is just us seeing like how that mindset becomes intertwined with just what it means to be a guy and be a guy's guy and
locker room talk
and all that jive. Yeah.
And then of course Amy is the logical, smart one about it that is a little more diplomatic about what it means to flirt with girls and have relationships. And
Amy never has a bad day. Amy never has
she's the voice of reason.
She always has the voice of reason, but she never even is allowed to have a flaw because she is not developed enough to have those flaws. You know what I mean? Like, Alan's allowed to make mistakes and learn from them. Amy never makes mistakes. She's just there to help Alan with his.
Yeah, she's the moral compass.
I think that's definitely something we should look into because I do know that we do get some things with Amy later in the episodes. But you're right. As of right now, maybe Amy's painted as this all-knowing great parent who is just, she balances work and her husband and the kids, and she never overreacts, unlike Alan, who's always overreacting. And that is something that I kind of want to look into.
Like, if I found out Amy was having an affair, then all of this would make sense. That I would completely buy. Like, yeah, she's keeping up because she's getting that D low key. Like, I can understand that logic.
I'm ignoring you and then moving forward. I just want to make that very clear. One other thing I wanted to say. So when we get into the next scene where we're talking to the boys about this, and it kind of leads to what I think is the whole point of this episode. I do like it. It starts off with the parents coming in and being like, "Hey, do you want to tell us anything?" And Eric's response is, "Not yet." And me, I just look. And then they show the earring. He's like, "Oh, okay, so now I have some things."
That would have not played with my parents at all. They would have come in swinging, I think, if they found any of my or a guy's property in their bed. I wouldn't be here today.
One of the things I thought was really funny was they were like, "Oh, nothing happened between me and Rebecca. Look at my face. Do I look happy?"
Yeah,
that was a really funny joke.
That's a funny joke, but again, it is kind of, it's problematic in a little way, but it's also very funny. I did love it, because Alan kind of verifies. He's like, "The boy's fine."
And it's really interesting because they have this conversation, and then immediately Corey comes in and he's like, "Hey, take it easy on this guy. He taught me how to get what I want from a girl," like in the creepiest way possible.
Well, again, I like how they show Eric's behavior influencing his little brother, which shows
foolproof method is how it's referred to. Foolproof
and it's
method.
not just the fact, like, so the issue isn't just what Eric did. It's not just the consequences of what Eric did. It's what Eric's teaching his brother, who he shares a room with, and what that says about how all of these men think about women. And I do like that they kind of take this entire scene and they're like, "All right, we're not going to sit here until you all understand that the way you're treating women is just not acceptable." And again, kind of in a way, what Amy, even though it's Amy's idea, she insists that it come from their father, so they so that they really understand that another man is telling them the way you properly treat a woman.
I would argue that Alan still has a lot to learn there as well.
Of course. That's kind of my whole argument.
Because even that whole concept of just like he's like, "I'm gonna go talk to my boy," like getting excited about this idea of his underage son plowing this underage girl in his bed. To me, yeah, maybe there's some learning he has to do still.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point. Alan does have a lot of growing to do himself, but I think the whole, especially when Corey talks about all the information that he got from Eric, which, by the way, I will say this is a great bit with like Corey just going on and talking like a younger brother would, and Eric just like saying his prayers and be like, "Does it matter? I'm dead." Like this little comedic back and forth is fantastic, but it's also really important that when Corey tells them this story, Amy's like, "Who is this girl? What's her name?" Like, can you answer the basic question? What's her name? And
there's that question that they ask Eric. They're like, "What's this girl's name?" "Rebecca, I do know her name. Do you know anything else about her?" "No." "How does that make you feel?"
Yes.
Which I thought was a really interesting question to ask.
Yeah. No, I that's what I'm saying. I like that they took this time to not, like, the episode could have very easily have set up that, Eric, the problem was that Eric got caught, That could have been the problem. Eric took a girl up to his room, he got caught, that was bad. And instead of doing that, which is what most sitcoms would have done, they really take the time to be like, no, the issue wasn't that you had a girl in your room. The issue is that you know nothing about this girl. And you're
that they know nothing about girls in general. Like even Eric, like at the end of the episode, is asking Corey for advice because he too is just making this up as he goes.
In that, we talked about a little bit about consent and restraining yourselves and the whole idea of like just as a teenager, you're still responsible for your hormones. Like I said, they just don't let Eric get away with it. And to not rush into sex, because I do think that that's something that Alan brings up. He's like, I know plenty of guys who were like, oh, we were doing nothing, and it resulted in them having a kid. Which again, I think there's sometimes a problem with the whole idea that the worst the worst consequence of sex is having a kid. But I still think that it's great that they took that moment.
Right, like, is there not a Planned Parenthood in this town? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we can avoid that.
Guys, it's Philadelphia. There 100% is a Planned Parenthood.
I just feel like it's so heavy, like these consequences of dating, and it was never presented in real life or in pop culture as something less than like either a huge romantic commitment or a huge mistake that you're going to regret.
Either or, yeah.
Right.
All right, so the final scene is where Corey actually cancels the date because he just says that he was trying to force it. And instead, he asks what her name is, because the entire time she really is just known as the new girl. And we get that it's Wendy, and they have this nice little high meet cute. What do you guys think about like the way that they tied this all up?
I appreciated that Corey chose the more moral and ethical road, and that he decided to get to know her a little well. And I think that it's very romantic. It's very fairy tale-esque. It's probably not realistic, but I appreciate that. Stuck to his character of being this lovable kid who means the best and would never want to take advantage of anybody. He gives it a little more thought, which I appreciate. Yeah. And he's not just this brute force flirting monster that Eric would train him to be.
Yeah. Can you imagine if he, like, again, to kind of go back where we started from, can you imagine if Corey did have the hair? Like, then you just have Sean and Corey.
Unstoppable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it would just be two Seans. It would be dual Seans. Like, I don't need to watch that show.
Being raised by an Eric. So that's definitely just a bunch of trouble.
I just didn't like... I mean, I like that Corey cancels the date, because clearly neither of these kids felt comfortable with this. Like, even this chick Wendy is all of a sudden like, yeah, maybe we should cancel this date because it's awkward that you don't even know my damn name and you're trying to get into my pants right now. So maybe we shouldn't do this. And that's what happens when you have 12 and 13-year-olds going to the school with 17 and 18-year-olds, is that they're just mimicking what they see. And this whole episode is Corey seeing all these older kids hooking up, seeing his friends hooking up, and feeling like, oh, I'm just going to emulate this. But what I did like from a story structure is how they ended it with the meet cute hi thing. Because this entire episode is, how do I get a girl to say hi? How do I get a girl to say hi? And at the end, he's like, hi. So he learned that the best way to get a girl to say hi is to say hi himself.
I did not even get that, and I absolutely love that you tied that back in. I did not see that, so that makes me... Well, yeah, congrats. Wow.
It's the Michael Jacobs moment of the episode.
All right, so let's get into bruh moments. What was your bruh moment?
I'm sorry, real fast. Was the last scene a blooper? Yes or no?
I actually didn't... Oh, no, I don't think it was a blooper. I mean,
when they
think
bust out laughing?
I think it kind of ended blooper-esque, but I think that scene was meant. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah, and I think they kept it in because it's also... Yeah, it's an older brother asking... a younger brother how to get girls and all this other stuff. So I think, and I do like that moment of Corey and Eric bonding. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, what's your bruh moment of the episode?
The moment that doesn't hold up?
It either can hold up, like it's something that you feel does relate to 2018, or something that you're like, they could never do this again in 2018.
For this episode, I would say that the biggest takeaway was Eric's conversation with Corey about how to talk to women. I thought that was really, like, kind of grotesque in a way, but they paint it that way, so I can't really... I don't know. This is a tough one for me.
All right. Kristine?
Yeah, I think it's a tough one for me, too. I think, in general, my bro moment is just how mature these relationships are. I didn't find that to be the reality in my life. I don't know if it's the reality now. It just, they seem to know a lot and seem to have really some insight that I totally didn't have at 12 and 13 years old.
Yeah, no, that's really good. My bruh moment for this episode is I'm gonna go back to Corey when he was talking to Topanga and the way that he's just, again, because I had mentioned it earlier with the incel culture. I think there's definitely something to be said about the whole when do I get the girl that's assigned to me. I think that that's an idea that I really want to squash, and it just really bothered me that they would even say it, but at the exact same time, totally understandable. Another joke that they kind of have in here, which feeds into this whole incel culture and boys expecting things, is Corey says, "I'm just going to get smart and build a girl."
Yes, which I made a note about because as soon as he said that, I thought about this really interesting documentary I watched with Kristine about men who build sex robots to have intercourse with.
If you ever want to never sleep, you should watch this documentary.
So moving on, what about Feeny Tommy? What would you say the moral of this episode is?
Feeny taught me that Viagra is a bestseller on the market, that it can make a difference in your sex life, and if you're struggling with ED, you should really get on that train, because half his age is what he said. That's, that's some miracle shit.
Of a man half his age.
It's a major improvement. My Feeny moment, I mean, I guess the one would just be to women have a name. They're people. Women are people. I guess it would be the big takeaway. The big learn that we all had to just learn.
I'm about to say, it's really sad that we needed an entire 20-minute episode, and it still went over some people's head. But yeah, learn her name was the takeaway that I had from this. Learn her name. The basics.
Yeah.
All right.
I will say just a real fast part of the bruh moment that that whole concept of you just have to make them think you're interested. You don't actually have to be interested. I thought that was a big takeaway for me from this episode of just like, wow, that's just such a shitty thing, but something I've like heard before that just really took me back.
Exactly. That's another really, really good one. Okay, so grades. What are you guys grading this episode as?
I think I'm going to give it a C for sexism.
Mm.
And just because I think it did paint girls as these objects to be had, that every guy wants one, and it's totally natural to pine over someone, to be persistent over someone, despite, girls just having a life and interests of their own and their own little worlds to get to know.
Yeah, I'm gonna do just a B. I just found the episode to just be kind of, I wasn't super interested in this Wendy girl. I wasn't super interested in any one of the main cast having sex. So yeah, just a B for me.
All right, so I'm going to be the opposite end. I think I enjoyed the comedy of this episode, and I did think that they attempted to do a really important conversation and teach a really important lesson. So I gave it a B plus. But the reason why I didn't give it any higher than that was because I did feel that like the story plot of the health teacher was a little unnecessary, and I feel like they kind of get to their point the wrong way, kind of using these women as tools, as we had talked about earlier. So,
before we wrap up,
mm-hmm.
Do you think Feeny and Jonathan got laid? Yes or no?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, for sure.
Both of them.
Without
okay,
a doubt.
Yeah.
So here's the thing: I have already told you. Mr. Turner and Miss.Kelly, they went home that evening and made a sex tape. It was probably not even that evening. He took her on his Harley, drove her to his apartment, and
he's holding the helmet while thrusting.
They definitely did. And you know what, Feeny? It's been a long time, so I'm happy for Fiend.
Yeah.
Feeny, get it. Live your life, Feeny.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much, Kristine, for joining us.
Thank you guys. This is a blast. Hope I didn't get too racy there.
Trust me, I think TC set the stage that we're good.
Oh, good.
Hey, this. Yeah.
Okay, so Kristine, tell the people where they can find you, or if you want them to find you.
Don't find me. That makes me uncomfortable. You guys can text me if you want to talk.
Yes.
That works. I like it. That's the best thing I've heard. Best response I've ever heard to that question before.
Well, that's what Bill Murray has. He only has a single phone number that if people call, they have to pitch screenplays through voicemail, and if he likes it, he'll call you back.
Oh, he's got burner phones for movie pitches.
Oh, yeah.
I like it.
That's great. Now, how about homework assignments? Do you guys have any recommendations or references that you want the listeners to check out?
I have one.
Sure.
I would recommend the listeners to read Rebecca Solnit's book, Men Explain Things to Me. She is an author, and she just goes through her interactions with men, both in the literary world and in her professional life, who try to explain things to her as if she has no idea what she's talking about when she's been published several times in the subject. It's a great book. It's full of laughs. She's really lighthearted about it. Girls, hashtag me too, hashtag girl power, hashtag what's her name.
I love it. I love it so much. TC.
On the opposite side of the spectrum, I would like to recommend the 2010 Netflix documentary, My Sex Robot. We had referenced it earlier on. It is a carnival ride, fascination and nightmares that I feel everyone should go on. Yeah, and it's only 46 minutes, guys. Only 46 minutes. It's an easy swallow. Yeah.
Okay. And my homework assignment this week will be the show Steven Universe. I don't know if you guys have you guys ever watched Steven Universe or anything?
Mm-mm.
It is this show that I had heard a lot about, but it is one of the best shows that I've ever seen deal with emotions and trauma and masculinity and sexuality. Like it's this kids cartoon that I'll say like the first season is like very cheesy and hokey, but it's all set up to like these really great issues. Just like social issues and maturity and dealing with how you feel about things and respect. So it's a really, really great show. And then I had been watching it for years now, and it just had a really big influential episode. So that's the one that I want to promote, as well as we are recording this during Pride Month. So I'm just give a big shout out to Pride Month and the LGBT community.
Ayo, ayo, ayo.
Shout outs.
Hey, can I add something real quick to the homework? Me and Kristine both have been watching this Robert Kennedy documentary on Netflix. I finished it. She's still like midway through. Fascinated by the whole thing. I know it's like it's about Robert Kennedy's race for presidency and his assassination. Super well done. I don't know who did it, but it's
great.
I couldn't stop watching it.
It tugs at the heartstrings, tickles the brain.
What's it called?
Bobby for President?
Bobby for President, yeah. Bobby for President.
There you go, Bobby for President. All right, thank you guys so much. All right, thank you for listening. This is Bro Meets World. Remember, you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, anywhere that you listen to your podcast. Make sure to leave us a rating, as you always enjoy. You can also follow us on Twitter at Bro Meets World, or Facebook at Bro Meets World, and email us bromeetsworld@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Extra Siege. That's XTRACEEJ. TC?
Yes, you can find me at @TheBraverMe on Instagram, or you can just find me at the club.
Up in the club. And leave Kristine alone. She doesn't want to be back.
Don't try to find me.
All right.
Hey, Kristine, will you do us a favor and send us out with our closing segment?
All right, guys. As always, remember to dream, try, and do good.
Yay!
Later, bros.
Later, bruh.